Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Tech Strong TV and welcome to Tech Strong Women, which is our regular series dedicated to celebrating women in technology, and not just the fact that they're women in technology, but what they're actually doing in technology, and taking a look at their successes and their challenges, obviously, and how we together are rising up the collective profile of women in the technology space. Today, I have the pleasure, first of all, I'm Charlene O'Hanlon. I'm the host of Tech Strong Women. My co-host, Tracy Bannon, unfortunately is not able to join us today, but we do wish her well, and hopefully she'll be with us on the next episode of Tech Strong Women. But today I have the distinct pleasure of having Rebecca. How do you pronounce your last name, Rebecca? I know I'm going to mess it up if I say
Krauthamer.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for being here, Rebecca. You are the founder, chief product officer at QuSecure. So tell me a little bit about your company.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Charlene. Really happy to be here. So QuSecure, what we do is there's this coming threat that is quantum computing to all public key cryptography. So kind of cybersecurity as we know it is threatened in a very real way. And so what we do at QuSecure is we provide solutions for enterprise and for government to protect data networks against this incoming threat. And we do it in a way that kind of makes this very necessary upgrade easy, accessible, and seamless. So yeah, that's what we do at QuSecure.
That's pretty cool. So quantum computing.
Quantum computing. So yeah, what the heck is quantum computing, right? So the way that I always like to describe it, because if you've heard of quantum computing, you might have Googled it and seen an explanation about ones and zeros at the same time. But it's never really a satisfying explanation. So the way that I always love to explain it is, if you imagine that you're trying to solve a maze and you enter into this maze and you can go right or left, right? And so you choose right, you choose left, you hit another T, right or left again. Mm-hmm. And it's this iterative process. You've been in a corn maze or something, and it's this iterative process, and hopefully ultimately you find your way through the maze. And it's the same with a classical computer. A classical computer is what you and I use, and it's what I'm on right now. So in the quantum world, that's a classical computer. So a classical computer thinks in kind of the same way that we do, right? It's trying to find a path through this maze. It enters, it hits its first T, and it can go right or left. Right, next T, right or left. And it's, even if you run it in parallel, it's this kind of iterative process where you ultimately find a path out. Now, in a quantum realm, what this 1 and 0 at the same time means is a quantum computer enters a maze and it hits its first T, and it can go right and left at the same time. And once again, right and left at the same time, and again and again and again. And that's really the power of the way that a quantum computer thinks. And it can look at all these possible combinations and all these possible different paths through a maze. And, you can extend a maze out to different kinds of AI problems or traveling salesman problems, these different things. And the cleverness of quantum algorithms means that you can chop off the wrong paths and instantly find the most optimal path through this maze. So that's really, really cool for a lot of areas. We can do some really revolutionary chemistry. We can do some really revolutionary things in AI. And of course, this, thanks to something called Shor's algorithm, this means that public key cryptography as we know it is toast. So that's quantum computing in a nutshell.
That's yeah. It's really fascinating to me to hear about quantum computing and the way that you've described it, because it seems so nebulous. It's it's really kind of hard to kind of pin down exactly what quantum computing is, unless it's like one of those things I don't know what it is, but I know what it is. I'll know it when I see it. But it's not a field that, you just don't hear too much about these days. So what was it about quantum computing that drew you to it?
Yeah, sure. So for me, I studied kind of in the AI field, and one of the things I'm really passionate about is the ethical side of technology. So I worked in AI for a while, and in part because it's becoming ubiquitous, right? We have technology at our fingertips all the time. So how do we kind of build things that help advance humanity and advance what we can do? And at a certain point in, I think, 2018, my current co-founder, Skip, we ended up kind of at an event together, and he started talking about quantum computing, and he'd just written a book about quantum computing. And I'd never heard of it before. Mm-hmm. And so I started to dive in, and it became really clear really quickly that this is the next generation. This is what's next for AI. This is what's next for technology. It's going to make so many things that we dream about in advanced tech possible. Mm-hmm. And it's such early days in quantum computing that the ability to be at the very forefront of it is incredibly exciting, and to be able to shape it in a positive direction. And of course, a huge piece of that is the cybersecurity piece. So how do we ensure that our data is protected going into the future? And it's not just because this quantum computing threat is coming down the pipe in the next several years, but it's also because data, the way that it's protected today, one sort of main thing that I guess one avenue of attack is data harvesting. Mm-hmm. And if you harvest data that's properly encrypted today, if that data has a shelf life, right? If that data is health records or bank account information or sensitive information, you want to make sure that that's protected in the future. So it needs to be properly encrypted and secured today to ensure that we retain our privacy, that we maintain the integrity of that really important data. So that's why getting ahead of it is very important.
Very, very cool. And I imagine you are probably one of the few females in the room, or even in the quantum computing space right now. I mean, it's certainly not something that kind of cropped up on my what do you want to be when you grow up? It was not one of the choices that was made available to me. So, how did you? It's like. How do you deal with that? I mean, it can be a difficult conversation sometimes, I'm sure.
It's so true. And back in school, the balance is really still not quite equal. So you're 1 in 8 women in computer science, or mm-hmm. my major was symbolic systems. And I think that still translates into the working environment, especially when it comes to something like cybersecurity or quantum. Shout out to a lot of really awesome women who are in the quantum computing space. So we have an advisor, Sarah McCarty. She's like a world expert in post-quantum cryptographic algorithms. She's awesome. Jessica Pointing over at MIT, I believe. She's got, all the advanced degrees from all the incredibly top universities. Julie Love heading up operations at Microsoft and quantum. So a ton of really, really cool women. But yes, of course, when it comes to, who's kind of deep in this, it's primarily reflective of software engineering generally. It can be challenging walking into a room and often being the only woman in the room. Mm-hmm. And I think you have the extra, you have extra expectations, and you'll sometimes get challenged in ways that you might not get challenged in if you're, if you weren't a woman, or if you looked more like everyone else in the room. So I think you have this pressure to really perform at or above what other people are expected to perform. Mm-hmm. And I would love to see more women. And I think one way, I love speaking out because I think women need to see more people that look like them in this space and get inspired. I think starting early too, like you were saying, when you're a kid, you want to be a fireman or firewoman. You want to be a astronaut or doctor. So I think having these role models really early on is incredibly important. And that sort of feeds in too to something else you were saying, right? Quantum is this unintuitive field, and something that Jack Hittery of Sandbox, or formerly Google, ex quantum said is if we can get quantum physics taught early, if we can get linear algebra, which is, the math that's really important in this space. If we can get those taught before calculus and before classic physics, if we can get it really early on and get people to start thinking in those terms, we could start, you could develop that intuition naturally. Right. And I think it's the same for kind of thinking in these ways in the quantum space, and also the same for getting more of a gender balance in the future.
You hit on something there that kind of makes me think a little bit. When we're talking about just the whole STEM and STEAM movement in school these days, there's so much emphasis on getting females involved in science and technology and engineering and math. But I wonder if we actually might be kind of going about it in the wrong way. Maybe it's not about the gender. Maybe it's more about the curriculum. Maybe we need to start thinking about ways that, it doesn't really matter if it's a male or a female, but just getting the right information in front of the students early enough so that they can make the decisions. I think, and please tell me, because obviously I'm older, and so I'm probably a generation removed, but it seems like the conversations around technology and engineering and science and math in school these days is a lot less gender specific than it used to be. There are a lot more teachers who are now promoting basically equality, if you will, for lack of a better word, basically STEAM for all, STEAM for, just not really just for, for males or for females. And please, like I said, tell me if I'm wrong, but I kind of feel like we are making some progress in the educational system. Obviously, it's not half as where it really should be. But I think iteratively we are making some progress.
Yeah, no, I absolutely think so. It's, as opposed to a decade or two ago, even when I was in school, right? I think getting to parity, promoting women and sort of non-typical people into STEM and STEAM is just at the forefront, which I think it wasn't before. And there's so many initiatives, and there's so much good happening. And hopefully we'll start to see those numbers sort of advancing from elementary to high school to college to the work world. I really do hope to see that. I think, it's funny. So when you're in the early days of a startup, right, you're not making money. You're kind of, you're putting it all in, you're putting it all on the table. So in my early days, several years ago, when we were starting out QuSecure, I was tutoring for kind of on the side to support it. And I always remember these two students that I tutored, brother and sister. And they started out when they were 6 and 8 years old, I think. And so the girl was younger, 6 years old. And I was tutoring them in computer science. And the brother, and this is of course anecdotal, but I always felt like it was representative. The brother was, he jumped right in. He was not afraid to make mistakes and kind of just go for it. And he progressed really, really quickly. And the girl, the 6-year-old, I worked with them for a couple of years. And the 6-year-old, even though she was really young, and this wasn't that long ago, she was already nervous. You could tell that she already kind of had the message that computer science wasn't for her. And, it isn't for everyone, right? You might be more of a language person. You might be, everyone has a specific genius, and it's okay if it's not for you. But she had already kind of absorbed the message that it wasn't for girls, is what I took away from that. And, she was very afraid to make mistakes. She was very afraid to kind of put herself into it and look silly. And that, that was sad for me. And I tried to encourage her and kind of, motivate her by saying, I'm not going to check it off as right until you've made 3 mistakes or something like that. But, I think it does speak to how we do have to really get ahead of it early. And I think there's still some work to do in terms of we can promote, getting women and other diversity into STEM and STEAM. But sometimes that also gives the message that you are different. You as a woman are different. And it points out that you are different. So I think, just making it more and more normal and giving women a safe place to start to learn, especially early on, is, I think, something we have to work towards.
Gee, and here I thought we were doing so much better than we are.
We're doing amazing. I meet so many strong young women, and I didn't want to kind of poo-poo that, but yes, I think we're doing great, and we still have some work to do.
Well, I think, the people who I speak with, such as yourself, the women who do come on and especially the younger generation, they are strong. I mean, they are really, they epitomize tech strong women. They're smart as a whip. They're not afraid to step up and be that mouthpiece, if you will, for their gender. And they celebrate the fact that they are female. They're not trying to hide behind, who they are as a gender, as a male or as a female, or, trying to be more guy-like. Mm-hmm. I am a female. I'm in this space. I recognize that, I may not be, one of the many, but I'm proud of who I am and where I am. And I think that's amazing. And I think it would be just so much better if we could get all females who are interested in IT to really, really think that way. And whether that comes from the school, whether that comes from the home, whether that comes from your work environment, it's obvious that, to your point, there's still work that needs to be done. So we are on the right track. And, but I think it's so important that we really do, collectively lift each other up and get that message out that it is okay to be a female in IT. And whether that comes from, the home or school or, even in the workplace, it's always so very important to say those words and say it is, it's a great thing to be, a female in IT and be proud of it. Really. I mean, I think for so long that the whole IT kind of moniker was, I hate to say geeky, and people are like, I don't want to be considered a geek. And so I think, honestly, that's why there were, a lot of females who were kind of shied away from being in the space because they didn't want to be labeled as such.
Totally. Yeah, no, I love what you're saying. Just it brings to mind this, the chief data officer at Franklin Templeton. She's just like incredibly fashionable. And we talk a lot about this topic, and she's just kind of fabulously fashionable and walks into the room and she is deeply, deeply technical, and she's leading a deeply, deeply technical part of a Fortune 500 company. But it's very true. If we're trying to be, for so long, there has been this message that you got to kind of conform and be tough and all these different sort of masculine things. But if you're trying to be something you're not coming from a place of, as much power as you can be. So I think that's absolutely true. What we bring is all very unique, and the message that it's okay to be a woman, whatever that means, and bring your full self to work is totally true.
Yeah. Yeah. And the whole education aspect as well, I think goes well beyond just school. And it really should, I think, move more into the workplace. And we've talked on Tech Strong Women in the past about the importance of mentorship and having the right mentors and having that, the right conversations about being a female in IT and or just, just being a strong woman in general. But, and your mentor doesn't even have to be another female. It's just really somebody who you can look up to, and you can kind of use as a sounding board here and there, and get, get honest opinions and get honest learnings from as well. And I'm a strong believer in mentorship programs, and wondering if you guys are, if your company is, or if you personally are involved in any sort of mentorship efforts, whether it's in the office with the Boys and Girls Club or whatever, what are you doing as far as, the kind of like paying it forward, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. Hugely, hugely important. Completely agree. I've had mentors, both men and women, who have lifted me up and taught me so many things about, that I belong, and kind of how to go forward as a strong woman in business. And I love mentoring. I do a lot of talks and a lot of education initiatives, and take on a lot of interns as well. So, as we're talking, I'm thinking about a current intern I have. She's a Stanford student, and we talk about a lot of this stuff pretty frequently. And I think getting these messages, I have and do currently benefit so much from the mentorship that I receive, and I love to pay it forward in any way that I can.
That's great. That's great. So I want to kind of turn the conversation a little bit to how you label yourself. You call yourself a technology ethicist. Is that correct?
Yes.
What is that? What do you mean by that? Because, it's not something that just kind of rolls right off the tongue.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a great question. So going back to what we were talking about before, technology is everywhere. You and I are on computers right now. We've got phones, probably, I've got mine right here. And, I studied AI, and it brings up a lot of these big questions of, well, you got to think about psychology and cognitive science, and what is a thinking thing? What's a human being, right? And you got to, in order to translate that into thinking about how you build machine learning, artificial intelligence. And a lot of those classes really got to me in a deep way. And so if technology is so, ubiquitous, if it's part of our lives, I think it's so incredibly important to be thinking about how to build it and direct it in a way that is going to augment us, that's going to kind of enhance our abilities and our humanity. Instead of, just, it could easily be going the other way. Things that just sort of sell things to us, right? That's kind of a big use case for tech. So it got really into the ethics side of things. So, I've done a number of things from help author exams and curriculum for college courses and technology ethics certifications and that kind of thing. Getting people excited about it, because there is a lot that we can do. And most recently, I worked with the World Economic Forum to author some governance principles for quantum computing development. Because again, maybe we weren't thinking about a lot of these things early on in classical computing, how to shape it and what some of the use cases might mean for us, right? In the 1960s, we didn't know that we'd all have smartphones. Right. But with quantum, we still don't know all of the use cases that are going to emerge. And same with AI, but we still have this ability to really shape it in a direction and to get ahead of it. And, both at sort of the individual contributor level, at the management level, if you're leading teams, and of course at the governance level. And that's the latest piece that we worked on, was advice for governments, universities, nonprofits. How do you think about quantum computing development? And how do you make it, one, accessible to people? How do you bring everybody into the fold? And this gets back to a lot of our conversation about women and diversity. How do you encourage people from all diverse backgrounds to get in and contribute to this thing. Because the more representation we have in that, the more it'll be shaped around everybody rather than a select few. How do we make sure that use cases are positive, that they push science forward, that maybe we can address sustainability as well. And then, of course, the cybersecurity and privacy piece is huge. On one hand, we have the known threat of quantum computing as it applies to data networks and data encryption. On the other side, we have quantum computers that are coming along, and they're going to be able to really intensely analyze data in a way that we're not familiar with. So how do we understand how to protect people and empower people with that data rather than the other way around?
Yeah, and that also kind of brings up questions, not only from an ethical point of view, but also from kind of more of almost like a human point of view. It's like, where do you draw the line? What makes something good and something, just kind of like hands off. And so I think having that kind of ethical perspective, if you will, when it comes to something, especially as big as quantum computing, no pun intended there. It seems like, having that kind of more human perspective, what the implications are to having this technology and what it's capable of doing and not doing, I think is so very important. And it really is kind of the next milestone, I think, in technology. We really need to bring a lot more kind of humanity into technology. Ethics, obviously, is a very large part of that conversation. And I don't think we're having enough of those conversations yet when it comes to ethics and understanding the implications of, privacy and how much information about you is out there and how people can use it and abuse it. And just we need to have some of those hard conversations, because right now they're not happening and they're starting to kind of bubble up. But I wonder, do you think that's going to be kind of the next big conversation, if you will?
I really, really hope so. And to your point, it can get kind of hairy, right? So, where do you draw the line? Good, bad. And of course, maybe there is no line, right? It's all contextual. And so cybersecurity is one of the sort of low-hanging pieces of fruit, right? Data privacy is important. We can pretty much all agree on that. But
data privacy. No.
Data privacy. But you're right. In a lot of these exercises where I work with other people working on the ethics side, you get into a lot of kind of nuanced conversations. And I think the most important thing for me is, not necessarily the philosophical exercise, although I think that's very important, but just that people are talking about it and thinking about it, and it's on people's radar to sort of think, actually, when I'm building this thing or when I'm architecting this thing, or when I'm using this thing, right? I'm using this service. I'm thinking of, it's in the back of my mind. I'm thinking about ethics. I'm thinking about my impact or the impact of this thing, or, the impact this thing has on me. What does this mean for my data? What does this mean for the people who are using this? And so I think period, and I think the average person, we can just to some degree, we can short circuit all those debates and just say, if everyone's thinking about this, if everyone starts to think a little bit more deeply, and this is context that you go into technology with, that's a huge win. And I think you're right. I think this is more and more people are talking about this, even from 5 years ago. And I think it's going to be at the very, very forefront of how we move forward. And I do hope that, it doesn't take a big, huge data breach or, some event to make us really pay attention and talk about these things.
Well, I hope you're right. I mean, I hope it doesn't take a very large event. Although I will say that we are a stubborn species. And so I think it actually may take a big event before we actually do have the big conversations, because they're hard. I mean, these conversations are very hard to have. And they really kind of make you feel, you kind of have to bring your whole self into these conversations, right? And I don't think really people want to do that. I think people are, for the most part, they're very guarded about how they want to, how much they want to share, even though they share everything on Facebook. But, when it comes to actually their authentic self, I think people are very reticent to share that kind of information. And so, which is kind of ironic considering the conversation they need to have has to be as authentic as possible.
It's a very human problem for sure.
Yeah. So where do we go from here then?
Where do we go from here? Well, that's a great question. Getting ahead of it, I think, getting people talking, you're totally right. It's a hard conversation to have. We're often not incentivized to be authentic.
Right.
I think creating those spaces where it's okay. One thing that we've done at QSecure is be really intentional about culture and the culture that we promote. We've even brought in consultants to kind of, as we grow and scale, how do we make sure that we're creating culture? Google, I think, did this original study of what makes the most productive teams. And it's something I think they called psychological safety. To your point, how do you get people to feel secure in expressing what might be a controversial or not? We might all be thinking that an opinion we have is controversial, but it might also just be what everyone's secretly thinking. So I think, and I see this more and more, creating cultures, both in academia, in schools, in office spaces where we can talk about these things, and where it's from the top made a priority. One thing that I have been working on, because I head up product, is product management is more and more a really important role in technology companies. Mm-hmm. We've put together a sort of product management tool that's an ethical product management tool. So at the design phase, at the research phase, at the architecture phase, at the build and test phase, what can you start thinking about in terms of the product management checklist of, okay, here, we've considered this, we've considered this, we've considered this. Make it sort of easy to have that conversation.
That is cool. Because if you think about it, the regular kind of product roadmap, if you will, it's all about the technology. It's all about the user experience. It's all about this, but there's not that, what happens if this, kind of that, if this, then that kind of conversation about, the implications of, whatever. I love the fact that you guys are kind of building that into that. That is a nifty thing.
Yeah, make it easy.
I think we just kind of hyper focus too much on the technology itself. We don't actually think about kind of the impact of that technology, and so there are situations in which we're kind of getting blowback from that. Kind of hyper focusing, but hopefully we'll, I love the fact that you consider yourself a technology ethicist. And I wonder if maybe this is a movement. Do you think we're going to have more technology ethicists in the mix?
I hope so. Yeah. I see more and more classes on it. So I think people are going to start thinking about it earlier. And I think, once we get to scale, I'd love to bring some on the team dedicated to it. I think at least a little bit, we're going to see it more and more.
I wonder what the ranks will be of technology ethicists. I mean, the ratios of males to females. It seems like it's more of a kind of I don't want to call it a softer skill, but it certainly is less, well, I don't want to say technological because that's totally untrue, but it seems like something more that female would think more about than perhaps a male. And I know that's completely stereotyping, and I apologize for saying that. But there are certain things that females do tend to think about more than males do. And so the ethics of a technology, to me, in my mind, would be one of those things. So I wonder if as the ranks do grow of technology ethicists, I wonder, who's actually going to be filling those ranks.
No, I totally hear what you're saying. I think, to be a technology ethicist and think about these things, empathy is a good superpower to have. And I think women can naturally bring that strength a lot of the time. And absolutely.
Yeah, I'm glad so I was thinking empathy. I didn't want to say it, but I'm glad you said it because that's kind of the go-to feeling, if you will, or the go-to superpower. I love that word, superpower, for females. Right. So great stuff. So what's on tap for your company?
Wow. So we've had a lot of really incredible advancements in the last couple months. So the President Biden in January and also in May released 2 separate executive memos saying, hey, government agencies, you need to make this upgrade to post-quantum cryptography. Essentially, all of our data, you need to make sure it's protected from quantum. There's a lot of kind of international dynamics at play here. And so national security is kind of very, very interested in making sure that things are, regular attack proof plus quantum proof. Mm-hmm. So that has sort of pushed forward our industry a ton. And so we've started to or continued to work really closely with those sectors. So a lot of government traction, and we'll be deploying there. And of course, it means for really highly regulated industries, especially those that do contract with the government, finance, et cetera, those industries are following suit. So it's a really exciting time to be working in this space. Mm-hmm. And I think things are just going to really grow really, really fast from here. We're already seeing it. No sleep for the weary. And yeah, I think so. Government's really getting on it, and I think we'll be seeing more and more of it in the news. And that's what I'm excited about.
Oh, well, that's great. And I think what you guys are doing is fascinating. And obviously you guys are in the sweet spot right now. Jennifer, I want to thank you for coming on and talking with me about, I'm sorry, not Jennifer. I'm sorry. I don't know why I said Jennifer. I apologize. I'm going to say that again. 3, 2. Rebecca, I want to thank you for coming on and talking to me about your company, about your viewpoints, about the ethics in technology, and everything else. It has truly been a great conversation. And I think what you guys are doing is really great stuff. So thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you so much, Charlene. Thank you for having me.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Tech Strong Women. We will be back with another Tech Strong Women very soon, but we'll also be back very soon with some more Tech Strong TV. So please stay tuned.